Today I'd like to talk about the American dream. I've been thinking about this and reading a book about the Mystery Train by Greil Marcus, who is the editor of Rolling Stone once, and he talks about this American dream as it's portrayed in rock and roll music, where it comes from, its origins. Where does this thought about the American dream originate? I believe it came from the early pilgrims to America who left England and Europe, and they sailed to the New World to establish a New England. And the Puritans that landed there were known as the Puritans of New England. And the American dream that was established was such that was to be a place where people could live according to the Bible's teaching. They could live according to God's will, the kingdom of God on earth. And it wasn't long, though, before the politicians who thought about the government that they were going to live under drew up a constitution and said, if we're going to live as people together, we need to have a set of rules. And part of that constitution says the right to the pursuit of happiness. The problem is happiness is a very subjective term, and what one person says is happiness may not be what another person sees as being happiness. And I believe after the politicians, the public took over, and the public decided to vote. They voted amendments to the Constitution, until now what the Constitution looks like and how it's practiced in reality is quite different from the way the Pilgrims and the early Puritans wanted the American dream to be lived out. It appears to me that the American dream now is one of where an individual decides to pursue what brings them happiness. And it's not a matter of serving the other person or serving the community or serving society. It's a matter of pursuing my own individual selfish goals that will bring me happiness. And this is not what was originally intended with the vision from the kingdom of God on earth as portrayed by the Pilgrims and Puritans who followed the teachings in the Bible. An example of how this works out is in practice with politicians. We have the President of the United States of America this coming week going to visit for the first time as President Israel. And President Obama wants to visit Jerusalem, and he wants to go up onto the Temple Mount where the temple used to be. The Muslims are not too happy about that because the Muslims have a mosque, two mosques actually on that site, and they feel they control the temple site. And they don't want the American president talking to the Israeli government, the new government, and talking about maybe even establishing the new temple where they can worship there on the site. But President Obama, as a Democrat, believes firmly in the fact that every person has the right to pursue happiness. And if it's what the Israeli government want to be doing to pursue their happiness, then it's part of democracy. I don't quite know how he's going to relate that to what the Muslims want to pursue as their happiness, and the Palestinians with what they want for their happiness. If you have this subjective term, happiness as being the basis of the goal, then you've got a multitude of definitions of that term, and then it's very hard to try and organise it and control it through government. But that's what the American dream is all about. I watched a program this week in China, and it was one of the entrepreneurs there, a woman, had said she'd been dreaming of the day when China could be run as a democracy, as the United States of America is, because then China would have the chance for entrepreneurs like herself to have choice, to follow their own dream. They wouldn't be under the control of a communist government. Amazing to think that within my lifetime has there been that change in a huge nation like China. But this dream of American freedom and the freedom to do your own thing and to have choice has seemed to spread throughout the world. And now people all over the world, if they feel they want to have their own happiness and they want to change the government, then they get together and protest, have a demonstration, use the media to call people together to demonstrate, and then they can overthrow that government. All, I believe, in the pursuit of happiness. There's a contrast between what this American dream is, as portrayed by the United States of America, compared to the kingdom of God. In the United States of America, there is now a general population that does not follow and read what's in the Bible, does not believe that that's where the teaching about life and the family and life in society is to be governed by. The Bible is a forbidden book. Prayer is not allowed in the schools. And so the Bible does not become the standard for what is regarded as the good life. In the kingdom of God, the good life is to do the will of God. And this kingdom of God established on earth is where the kingdom of priests, his people, pray and talk with God, come to find out God's will, and then God explains his will to them, and then they bring it to the people. And that's what God wanted with Israel when they came out of Egypt, to be a kingdom of priests. You see, if we want to know about the story of life and what happened in the beginning, we go to the beginning of the book, Genesis. And the book of Genesis explains what happened at the beginning. If we want to know the end of what the story is going to be, we go to the end of the book, Revelation, and there it's revealed what's going to happen in the end. What's going to happen to this earth? What's going to happen to the people on this earth? But if people decide they don't want to read the Bible and they don't want to know God's point of view, but each individual wants to have their own dream, and each individual wants to have their own right to make their own interpretation, then we'll have a multitude of interpretations. The American dream is a dream. And as Bob Dylan said, to dream, you have to be asleep. I believe it's time to wake up and to be alert and to examine whether the dream that's been sold to the Western world through its main market, the United States of America, and its media, whether that dream is the right dream, or whether it's much more beneficial to pursue life in the way God intended it to be pursued, and that is a life of service, a life where it's built around family. The family then becomes the core value for the community. The community then influences society, and it's for the welfare of that society and the world that we do our behaviours, our actions. It's not about the individual having the right to be independent and being able to pursue their own happiness. This is one of the problems with the same-sex marriage bill that's coming here in New Zealand. And it just appears to be that everybody, man, woman, they want the right to have what other people have. If the Christians have the term marriage and they can celebrate that, then how come a same-sex couple can't use the word marriage? Of course, this is forgetting that in the beginning, in Genesis chapter 3, God said what was marriage between a man and a woman, and the two shall become one flesh. I believe the American dream, particularly as it's portrayed in the rock music that we listen to, is something that can be very dangerous because it spells out the good life in terms of the pursuit of happiness, which is often the pursuit of pleasure and greed and selfishness. It's certainly not the dream and vision that God had when he planted men and women on this earth.